ecosystems. We're going to look at the various types of ecosystems, and ecosystems have biological and abiotic parts to them. So we're going to see what we've got in here as far as terminology that we can use. Terminology. First, we've got a biome. A biome, by definition, says it's one of several major types of terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems that span large areas and are characterized by particular types of vegetation. So when we're looking at a biome, we are looking at a massive area. So worldwide, we've got, depending on who you talk to, probably a dozen to 24 different kinds of biomes. So these are very large areas. Within that, we also talk about a habitat. And a habitat is the location where a plant lives or an animal lives. So if you look at your habitat is varied a little bit, but it starts out, you've got the habitat at the university where you're at. And within the university, you may frequent certain areas more than others, and that would be your habitat. So a habitat is a very restricted location, and it doesn't necessarily have defined characteristics to it. It could be variable. We also talk about a niche. Some people call this a niche. It comes from the German. It has two pronunciations to it. A niche is the way an organism fits into a community of ecological system. A plant's niche typically includes temperature range, moisture level, soil type, habitat, and seasonal variation. So when you look at this, you're actually seeing that it brings in a lot of abiotic parts in it that determine where it's going to fit in. You have got a particular niche in what you do, and that goes back to things like, where do you feel most comfortable? What has the most appeasing area to you? And therefore you create your own little niche. If you have an apartment, you share it with somebody else, you're going to have your own little niche in there where you put your stuff in a certain way because that's what you want in order to be able to function properly. Some of these things are terrestrial. Terrestrial means it's land-based. We also have things that are aquatic or marine. Aquatic means freshwater, marine means saltwater. So you've got an aquatic thing, you've got a marine thing. You've got some of the same things going on in both of these. It depends on things like depth of water and how that is affected by light. So all of these are the different terminology we use to start looking at these parts. First one we're going to look at, biomes, tropical forest. A tropical forest is a place where you get a lot of moisture, you get a lot of sunlight, you get a lot of everything going on, and therefore you get a lot of growth out of it. When we think of a tropical forest, we often think of a jungle. There are some major jungles or tropical forests worldwide, which include the Amazon, which is absolutely huge. And it's the type of place, if you get lost in it, chances are you're not getting found because it is so lush and so dense and you've got so much going on in it. And these are often called diversity hotspots because you can have a lot of different things going on in there. We have what we call a savanna. A savanna is a type of grassland that has trees dotted through it. This shows you a savanna. This is a place in Africa. You can see how it looks like it's got high productivity because it's got a lot of grass and it's got a lot of food in it. It will have a lot of animals in it. And these are highly productive areas. But it is a grassland type transitional sort of thing. We've got a grassland. A grassland is dominated by grasses. And as such, we think of a grassland looking like this. You can see in this particular case in the background, it looks like we've got some bison and it just looks like free range everywhere for whatever is going on here. And this again would be a grassland. We have a desert. A desert says you're getting less than 10 inches of rain and it's unevenly distributed. And what we mean by that is the rain may come where you have no rain during 6 to 9 months, and then you get an inch of rain, then you get 5 inches of rain, then you get an inch, and then it's over for the year. It's unevenly distributed. When you look at this, you see a lot of lack of plant growth many times, and in certain areas, when you get the rain coming in on top of it, you will get massive plant growth for a short period of time. This is an aerial picture of West Texas, East Arizona, something like that. You can see the ground and everything coming up, and the little dots that are in there are trees, but you don't see a whole lot of anything else in there, and you can actually see where it looks like the soil is very thin, it's very poor, you don't get much water. When you do get water, it's going to cause a lot of erosion, and this is a desert type area. This is Nevada near Las Vegas. This is where you come in, and what you see here is a lot of desert. This area does not get much rain. It's very flat. You don't see much plant material unless it is watered from the outside, and you can see houses all over the place, but you don't get a lot of trees in between the houses or anything. And again, this is a desert. Not much rainfall, very localized. We have what we call a chaparral. A chaparral is a Mediterranean type climate, and the chaparral then is a place that has cool areas. It doesn't get very warm. It doesn't get very cold either. You have modest amounts of rainfall. And one of the other things with chaparrals is they're often adapted to fires because they tend to be a little bit cooler and drier climate. This is a chaparral in Southern California. Now you can see that down in the bottom you've got some stuff that looks like pine trees, but up in the upper parts what you've got is more like a grassland, but it's got short plants in it and it doesn't have very tall materials. And again, this is a chaparral. Coniferous forests, conifers, gymnosperms. So we are looking at pine tree-like materials. Coniferous forest, this is out of California. And you can see it's got some very straight pine trees growing up. You can see that this is a more mountainous area. It's got some water coming through, and it looks like this. This is a coniferous forest in Florida. You see the basal material, then that's palmetto scrub, and that's about 3 feet in height. You can see you've got char marks on the bottom of the plants, and that's where they go in and they burn off the basal material because it produces a lot of material in there. They will burn these off in controlled burns every couple of years to make sure that we don't get major forest fires coming through it. But it is a coniferous forest, and you can see all the pine trees scattered out through that. And you will find in certain areas of the South that these things cover thousands of square miles. Tundra. Major limiting factor in tundra is going to be temperature. The temperature is so cold that you don't get things growing very big. And you have a very short growing period, so therefore you don't have things growing much at all. This picture is tundra from Greenland. Now, if you look at this picture, this is gorgeous. And you can see the icebergs floating in the water in the background. You can see the rocky slopes up here where nothing's growing. And then you see the very short plants that grow in this that have a very short life cycle in order to be able to complete what it does. And again, not much growth, not very big, but major limiting factor is going to be temperature. Lakes and ponds. Lakes and ponds are aquatic type areas, fresh water. And when you look at a lake and a pond, you get a lot of fresh water being collected. It will either percolate into the soil, but in a lake or a pond, it will stay for a good bit of time. This is a lake in California, and you can see how pristine this looks. It's oligotrophic. There's not a whole lot of nutrients in it. You can see how the water is fairly clear, and you can see down into it. Now, the light only goes into a certain depth before it starts getting filtered out. And this becomes a very pretty sort of area. Florida, you see this. This is a eutrophic lake. It's got too many nutrients in it, and it's overcrowded, and it's got a lot of stuff growing in it, but it is again, a very distinctive sort of lake. So you've got lakes and ponds. The difference between a lake and a pond is just size. A pond is smaller, a lake is bigger. How big does it have to be? There's no real stipulation that's saying it's got to be this size or that size. Wetlands. Wetlands are places where water comes in, but it may also be dry at times. You're going to get a variation from time to time as to whether or not it's very wet or very dry. This is a wetland near St. Marks, Florida. And you can see in this particular case, you don't have a lot of water in there right now, but this will fill up and it will get to be totally full. But you see the depth of the water is not going to be that great. This is another place nearby where the water is filled up. And again, I don't believe that this is going to be more than a couple of feet deep, but it creates a very nice habitat for a lot of different types of birds. And again, this is going to have water coming in. This is what you'd call a tidal marsh because this is going to be affected by the tides. It's also going to have what we call brackish water, which means it's a combination of salt water and fresh water. And as such, it's not really salt water, but it's not really fresh water either. And certain organisms adapt to this kind of area. This is Central Florida. And in Central Florida, you've got a lot of lakes, you've got a lot of ponds, and it's really kind of a wetland sort of area. And what they do is, in order to be able to put up a housing development, they will go in and they will dig these channels. And as they dig out the channels, that will give places for the water to flow into. The material that they remove, they then pile up, and that's what you're going to build your house on. How high is it from the water level up to the house? Elevation-wise, you may be looking at 5-6 feet, and that's absolutely fine for the most part, but you will see things that look like this. And this particular one is just south of Orlando. We have streams and rivers. The difference between a stream and a river is size. A stream is small, a river is large. This is an aerial photograph of a place out in Texas, and you can see the river runs through it. It comes down from the left side on the upper part, and it comes over, and it twists around, and it turns this way, and it goes that way, and it goes every way from there. So a river is a larger area. A stream is a smaller area. This is what we would call a stream or a creek. It's a smaller volume of water. Now, this can fill up to be quite large, but this is not very long and it's not very wide, considering that's a railroad bridge up on top. So the width at the narrowest spot in here is probably 10 to 12 feet across. The depth is no more than a foot or two at normal running times. So this is what you would call a stream. So we have variation between them. Then we have ocean. How big are the oceans? They're monstrous. This is a picture of somewhere in the Bahamas from about 35,000 feet up as plane was flying along, and you can see the beaches, you can see the various areas in here, you can see the lighter colors. The darker colors represent greater depths. And so you've got lighter colors, you've got darker depths, and this is all variation in the ocean. So you can see this as well. And oceans are a very large marine type biome because it's all salt water rather than fresh water. This is a junction between a bay and the Atlantic Ocean, and you can see areas where sand comes in and you've got marine salt water flowing this way and that way. And again, these often turn into very productive sorts of areas. But again, marine, it's salt water. So when we look at biomes, large areas, large expanses, you've got terrestrial ones, which are land-based. You've got aquatic and marine ones, aquatic being freshwater, marine being saltwater. And the variations that you have occurring in them are based on many of the abiotic factors that determine what happens on a daily basis in these places.